Well, hello, everybody. How is it going? It is good to be back with you today. Day one, day two, day one is over, and now we are back in full swing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Brandon Lewis. You're back to join me today. I was not that guy on the picture you just saw. That's Dr. Scott Norda. We both work at Resolve Medical. We're medical providers here. Wish I was as good looking as him, but I am not. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be with you today that we can talk more about mastering our metabolism. And we're going to jump right in because, like I said yesterday, I really want to respect your time. We'll try to keep this to 30 minutes. So let me jump over here and share my screen with you. I do want to touch base really quick and let you know. Our health coach, Laurie Sotro, she is here with us again today. She is amazing, and she will be keeping an eye on that chat. So if you have questions that come up, please reach out there. She's going to be putting links to different studies that we talk about today, as well as hopefully you can interact with her there and respond to some of the questions that we're going to ask. So let me share my screen with you. Okay. And let me make this bigger. Okay. So today we're talking about common barriers and stumbling blocks. Remember, yesterday was nutrition, and that's where we were at. Today is going to be a lot of fun. I do want to give you a fair warning. Here's our warning. Wait, let me make sure I can control this. Brace yourselves. Today there's a lot of information. Just know this is not, worrisome or concerning. We're all in this battle together. These are all going to be things that we're dealing with together, and we can all make a difference together. It's a lot of research. I have my wife standing by that she'll tell me if we get too deep into medical jargon and she's thinking about other things, she'll let me know that we need to start bringing it back down to earth. So before we jump into this, though, I would love to know, maybe if there's a couple people here on the group that I'd love to hear from you. Is there anybody that has chosen a challenge from yesterday as far as nutrition goes to implement in their life? Whether it's choosing 30 different fruits and vegetables, or whether it's adding in a culture night or something like that we talked about yesterday. Is anybody willing to share briefly something that they've implemented or started to contemplate doing since yesterday? I'm going to look through here and see if there's anybody willing to share. If not, that's okay. I would love to hear you chat, type some things over to Lori and let her know as well what you're getting out of this, because we want to know. We love feedback, and we want to hear from you and make sure this is very applicable. So please Jenny were you willing to here? I think I need to unmute you, or I guess I have to ask you to unmute.
Okay, does that work? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I started doing 30 fruits and vegetables a week because that is hard for me. 30 plant-based.
You know what?
We went to the store yesterday and bought a bunch of stuff.
I love it. I think that's even more impressive. Jenny's on the road. She's traveling. So it's taking this up a notch. It's hard to store fresh fruits and vegetables as well.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Are you starting to keep track, like on a daily basis, of how many you're eating?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do, I'm just going to try to make sure I started doing a few weeks ago, like a 24-hour fast twice a week. So that means on the days that I don't do it, I have to get like 8 different things on the other days. So yeah, I'm just keeping track daily because I didn't want to get overwhelmed trying to do keep track all week. So I'm just going to try to make sure every day I get 7 or 8 different things a day.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Great. Anybody else want to share? Let me scroll through here. I'm looking for hands. Anybody want to share? If not, that's okay. We'll jump in. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you. That's super inspiring to me. It's always a struggle for me too, to make sure that we're getting those 30 different fruits and vegetables. Sometimes we get in a pretty routine habit of just eating the same ones. So it's good to mix things up.
Brandon, I don't know if you can see the chat, but lots of people have chimed in on there. There's some great responses. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, culture. Yeah, I didn't. Let me jump on here too. Culture might. We're looking at fasting, adding in spices, stopping to eat 3 hours before bed. Oh, I love it. Love it. This is all phenomenal. Good job. Thanks. Thank you, Lori, for telling me. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, here we go. So yesterday we talked about how to fuel the body. Today we're diving into the other side of it. How do we keep that fire stoked? How do we increase our metabolism? Are these questions that you've ever asked yourself? Why don't I have any energy? Why is it so hard to lose weight? Why do I hit plateaus? Why does it seem like everything that I'm doing, like everything I'm putting into the equation to get the results I want, is not giving me paying dividends? I'm not getting out what I seem to be putting in. Have you ever asked yourselves those questions? Or maybe there's a different question or a different frustration that you hit a lot of times in your life. What does that look like for you? Throw it out in the chat. Let other people know. Let Lori know. What are those things that, that are like those frustrations when it comes to your overall health that are just hard to get over? Really what that looks at is, it does seem like that comes down to be that question is, we're still asking, why is it that what I'm putting in doesn't give me the results I need? So we're still asking that question. I'm feeding the fire. I'm putting in the effort. I'm eating right. I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to stay unstressed. I'm exercising. Why don't I see the results? And sometimes we have to step back from that and we have to ask ourselves, what does the fire look like? What's going on? And really look at that second question that we brought up yesterday of, how do I stoke the fire and how do I fuel it? So that's what we're going to focus on today. So here are some of the common things that we see quite a bit, that I'm going to call them our fire retardants. These are the things that are really putting a damper on that metabolic fire in our life and making it that it just doesn't function. Undereating. So I worked for a time in a weight loss clinic. This was probably the number one thing I saw, is we're just not giving our body enough fuel, which I know we talked about that tomorrow, but it plays a role in here because it's almost like we overly stress about, man, I eat like a bird. We hear that a lot, right? I don't know how I could eat less and still function. And it's amazing because you think, and as you review diets with people and their 3-day food plans, you're like, you're doing amazing things on no fuel. How do you just imagine what we could do if we could fuel your body and make you feel well and still get those goals? But that's a big one. And a lot of times it's almost like that same response of fight or flight, except it's almost like hide and survive, that our body we're still sending those fear signals to our body. And all it wants to do is just survive. It's like, hey, we must be living in a land of scarcity. I need to bunker down. I need to conserve. I need to drop my basal metabolic rate so that I can live tomorrow. And so even though it seems like that calories in, calories out, we're like, I'm putting nothing in, I should start losing weight. The undereating actually can be a hindrance and drop that fire down to a whole lower level. Stress, sedentary lifestyle. These are two big ones. I put little asterisks right there because these are ones that we're going to address in the coming days. Stress tomorrow, sedentary lifestyle on Thursday. So we're not going to touch much on them, but we will for sure. These other ones, we start to jump into like these clinical issues that we see, like micronutrient deficiencies, toxins, inflammation, mental and emotional health. That's a pretty big one as well. And really what we're looking at here, and some of this can feel a little bit overwhelming. The thing that I want you to remember is everything that we talk about today can be addressed. Functional medicine is not about like doom and gloom of like, well, sorry, that's it. Even if it's genetics where we're turning on different genes and trying to get your body to express and activate and utilize vitamins in the right way, those are all things that we can look at. So when we talk about toxins and barriers and micronutrients and what they do in the body, these are all things that can be addressed. And it's exciting to see that we can affect a lot of these. So we're going to start going through this list. The first one we're going to talk about is micronutrient deficiencies. Now, when we look at probably like the essential, what are they called? Like the essential nutrients for survival, the essentials, you have protein, carbos, and fats, just your overall calories. The other ones that make the list for survival would be vitamins, minerals, and water. Those 6 things are what we need to survive. I just picked out a couple of them, not to say that these are the ones that are the most important, because a lot of times it's hopefully if anything, we've painted the picture that this can be very individualized and very personalized to what's going on for you. But I just want to paint a picture that these things do create issues in the body. Probably one of the biggest things that we notice too is, like, if you think clear back in those saline days when we had scurvy, right? Nobody knew what to do. And all of a sudden we started giving people vitamin C through citrus fruits. And they thought, oh, that was it. We were deficient in vitamin C and it wreaked havoc on our bodies. Great. Let's just pull out vitamin C and we'll give that to everybody. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait, now that everybody is sufficient fed with vitamin C, what else are we missing? Because now we see things like rickets and what's going on with vitamin D and those kind of things. So it's hard to pull out one and say, this is the most important. We try to do it all the time in medicine, right? This is what will fix it. Name it, figure out this one little thing. But there's such a symbiotic relationship between everything going on, between vitamins, minerals, gut microbiome, hormones, inflammation, stress, sleep. All of these play such a crucial role into how we feel, which is why we have to look at everything in the big picture. So, sorry, that was a lot to set the stage, but micronutrients, huge connection with our metabolic syndrome. And when we talk about metabolic syndrome, we're talking about obviously the mitochondria, but really it's like weight, hypertension, diabetes, blood pressure, hyperlipidemia, those kind of things. That's usually what triggers that metabolic syndrome thing. So you can see here that there's examples in the research, and these are very current ones. I tried to make sure that they were within the last 5 years so that you can see this is still something that we're diving into. We're very concerned about this in the research and what's going on. So zinc is a pretty good one. The age-old adage is you need zinc to think. So if sometimes looking at zinc, and this is one that we see in clinical practice quite a bit, if zinc is low, it can make all the difference. Same with vitamin B6 and folate and B12. Those B vitamins play such a crucial role into metabolism, energy, sleep, all of hormone regulation, something called your methylation cycle, which we'll touch base with in a little bit on genetics. But there's just a whole myriad of information out there, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. This is just to show you that it exists. One other thing I would touch on with this is iron. A really cool study that I saw recently talked about how they looked at women who were non-anemic, meaning that their blood counts were the normal. They were regular. They weren't deficient in red blood cells transporting oxygen. But their iron was just on the border. It was just kind of low. And all they did was supplement iron, and they watched work and energy production and all of these things. They all increased. So even in the light of what we would think would be the issue with iron, it does so many other things in the body. So we can't always just pick one thing like this. This is going to help you because we're increasing your oxygen, or this is going to help you because we're decreasing inflammation. Like I said, there's so many things that they do in our body that it's good to get a whole picture. And these are things that are easy to check, simple to just see what's going on in the body from a lab standpoint. One of my favorite ones is vitamin D, just because I really like to be outside. There's such a huge connection between vitamin D, as you can see here, between our glycemic load. Obesity and weight is strongly connected to vitamin D. Sleep is really affected with vitamin D. Aging, oxidative stress, all of these effects that we have, the negative effects that we don't want on the body. And as you probably know, one of the best ways that we can get vitamin D is to just get outside and be in the sun. There was a cool research that looked at how long do we really need to be in the sun to make vitamin D? And 30 minutes a day. This was a study done in Norway, and it was in the middle of summer, and it said 30 minutes a day at midday, and you can create 10 to 20,000 units of vitamin D, which is a whole bunch. That's plenty. In fact, like the normal recommended daily allowance is like a lot lower. I think it's under 2,000. So you can get plenty of vitamin D from the sun. The issue becomes, one, are we getting the best sun for vitamin D? I mean, all the morning sun and the evening sun have their own benefits that we'll talk a little bit about tomorrow. But we can't always produce the same amount of vitamin D that we can at noonday in the middle of summer. And studies show that that can decrease anywhere between 10 to 100%, depending on where we live and the time of year. So sometimes we think, man, I'm getting in the sun, I'm getting vitamin D, and we might not be making any. So that's why this is one that's really good to check at different times in the year and kind of see how your body's making it. What does supplementation do for you? Because it is connected to so many different things: circadian rhythm, mental health, stress, all of the things. So that's vitamin D. That's my spiel on that. Let's talk about genetics again. I touched briefly on it when we were talking about B vitamins. A lot of times when we look at genetics, we think about like the really big negative ones, like, oh, maybe I have ApoE, which puts me at a higher risk for Alzheimer's, or maybe I have a BRCA2 gene, which shows me that I have breast cancer that runs in the family, or HLA-B27, where we're looking at autoimmune type stuff, or whatever it is. Some of these can be deemed more like, well, it just is what it is. We can't change it. So I'm sorry, the doom and gloom genetics. There's so many more genetics that can be changed and can be modified. And that's really looking at something called epigenetics, and what genes we turn on and what genes we turn off and how we express them on a daily basis. And I was just looking at a pretty cool lab that's coming up, more of like a startup lab that looks at something called your metabolic health and metabolic aging. And that's really what they're trying to identify is, what genes are we turning on and can we affect that? And by far and wide, the research says, yes, we can, based on lifestyle, based on nutrition, based on sleep, based on vitamins and minerals and all of these things that help support the function of the body. So just remember that these things act like a switch in our body, and we can turn them on, or the ones that we don't want on, we can turn them off, like that inflammation. Just because it's in your genes, there's still a lot that we can do about it. It's good to know. And the reason why some of these things are good to look at is because we want to take the maximum amount of effort and put it into the area that's going to make the biggest difference for you. So instead of worrying about, oh man, I gotta get enough protein, and I got to get enough fiber, and I got to look at my genetics, and I got to make sure my vitamins and minerals are in place. And what's my sleep doing? All of a sudden we can be really overwhelmed. But if we can identify those key areas where we can get the maximum output for the amount of effort and time that we have, that's when things start to play nicely with us, and that we get to see the benefits that we want. So genetics, it is an important piece to the puzzle because we can turn them on and turn them off. Let's talk a little bit about toxins. This is something that we are exposed to all the time, all of us, in every place, in our homes, outside, at work, at school, wherever we are. And I just wanted to put a couple of these to show you. BPA is a pretty common one that we talk about, especially when we look at plastics. But it's also something that's pretty common in the use of like tin cans and linings inside of soda, cardboard boxes, anything that's processed, because it makes storage a lot easier. We store toxins in our fat, which is why we can see such a huge concern with weight loss and toxins. And maybe this is something that you've never thought about, and maybe it is. But the more we look at toxins, the more we're just exposed to them in every place that we go. And it's interesting because they can act as hormone disruptors. They can act as they can affect what's called your endocrine system, which is all of your other hormones, sex hormones. There's even some research that looks at how they're affecting the development of diabetes and obesity in children, just because of what we're exposed to on a regular basis. Now, again, not to say that that means that we're all doomed, because we all live in the same world, but it is something that's important to note, and it is something that we can test for to see if that's something that is affecting you. Another big topic and big area of concern is, if my slides will change, I think I will jump to heavy metals. This is an interesting one. Even recently, I've been working with a patient where, man, we've been tracking heavy metals for so long, and it just seems like there's always a subtle fluctuation in the urine. And we're like, where is this source coming from? Like, and why are they different from month to month? We finally checked tap water, and her tap water came back with levels of uranium and lithium and arsenic. So heavy metals are a part of there. And in fact, I really liked this. There was a statement from this National Library of Medicine right here that you can see, where it's talking about heavy metals. And it says, hey, some metals that we're exposed to are super important, like they're essential, but some of them are not. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be exposed to them. They're going to be there. So it says, however, they'll inevitably enter our human body due to their presence in the environment. We all live here. We're all exposed to them. And similar to the essential metals, they can induce toxicity once certain concentrations are reached. So that is a concern. Heavy metals, toxins, other things like mold and other like toxins / infections can wreak havoc on the body. Inflammation. Let Lori know in the chat. Have you ever just said to yourself, I don't know why, I just feel inflamed? I think we all have, right? Like, inflammation is a pretty big one. And we can see that toxins can affect inflammation because they start to affect the fat storage. There's also been some research to say, hey, which came first? Kind of like the chicken or the egg scenario. Inflammation or insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. And they say, yeah, they do play a role in both. And it's kind of like this downward spiral that we make. But more times than not, it seems like inflammation is the driving force. And if you think about our discussion a little bit yesterday as to why that is, if our cells are bogged down, if we're not able to clean them out, if we can't perform that cellular autophagy, man, then all of a sudden work comes to a halt. We're really putting a damper on that fire. And all of a sudden things start to back up, and we just are entering again into that hide and survive, and really affecting what's going on in our body. So one other really important area that we should mention, and if I can figure out how to do this. So one thing that I think is really important to talk about is the effects that mental health and trauma have on our physical well-being. There's a great book out there called The Body Keeps Score that talks about how mental health can have a physical impact on what we go through, whether it's childhood trauma, abuse, whether it's PTSD or depression. It could even be something as simple as negative self-talk, which is something that we're all guilty of to different degrees. But we've had many discussions of saying, man, one of the best benefits that we can have with addressing health from a functional medicine mindset is somebody who is mindful of the mental aspect, and having just a great therapist in your back corner, or a support system, or somebody that you trust that you can talk to about all of these things, because they affect our outlook on life. They affect what's going on physically just as much, sometimes if not more, than what's actually going on inside the body. And they can really bring down that basal metabolic rate, really slow down mitochondria function, slow down brain function, increase brain fatigue. All of the things that we've talked about really put a damper on the fire. So that was a lot of information. I'm sorry, because 30 minutes, still got 5. So do you feel overwhelmed? Like, that's a lot of information. And I know I just spitballed a ton of it at you. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with all of these different things that can just affect our life, that a lot of them we don't have control over? Like, we're just exposed to them all the time. Let's talk about some of the things that we can do. One of the things that's really important is reducing your toxin exposure. So some of this we touched on briefly yesterday. Even when we're dealing with infection or mold or things like that, the foundational building block is always, well, let's get you out of that environment. Let's give your body the opportunity to heal and a chance to heal on its own. So by limiting processed foods, we're just going to reduce our toxin exposure. Buying organic produce, the Environmental Working Group has a great resource called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. The Clean 15 are the top 15. They're the most cleanest sources of produce out there, like the types of produce that even if they're not organic, they have the least amount of pesticides and herbicides. So they're clean. They also have the list of the Dirty Dozen, that if you're going to buy organic, those 12 are the ones to buy, because the ones that are not organic are just full of toxins. So it's similar. We're back to that discussion about fueling your fire with good clean wood, or like a railroad tie where it's just going to burn black, and it's just you can do it. I don't recommend it. And over time, it's just going to dampen that fire and put a huge stress and strain on your body. Reducing plastics. This is one that we can do through a lot of different ways, whether it's food storage and how we store our leftovers, whether it's our water bottles, drinking cups, all of the different forms of plastic that we have in our life. Another one is, let me move my little thing so I can see, evaluating our cleaners, personal hygiene products, all of the different things that we use on a daily basis. One thing that's great, not only does the EWG look at food, but they also look at different products, cleaners, hygiene products. And on their website, you can see that they have verified that some products are better for you than others. And you get this little stamp of approval that you see in this upper right-hand corner. So you can always look for products that have that EWG verified, meaning toxin, chemical inside those things is lower. The last thing that we should mention with this is make sure you're practical. We can limit, we'll never eliminate all of our exposures, because we all live in this world. And whether it's from our carpet or couches or the VOCs from paint or whatever it is, or plastics or fast food, it's everywhere. And in fact, there was a really interesting article that I saw it was a research group where they were looking at a family who they just had high amounts of plastic and some of these organic toxins in their urine. And they're like, okay, we're going to get everything organic, and we're going to do all the things correctly. And then we're going to recheck. And in this research, they rechecked and their levels went up, and they were like, what just happened? And so then they sat back and they thought, okay, well, what are we eating? What are we feeding this family so that we can track the progress on this? And what it came down to was the source of dairy. Even though it was still an organic source, they started to count off all of the different ways and touch points that it has from the cow to the table. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, we got, you have the machines that are going to extract the milk, and it has to go through plastic tubing. You got the workers that have gloves. They're going to store it in plastic that then it's going to be stored in a big vat that's going to be put in jugs and then moved again, temperature fluctuations, all of the things. And they're like, man, who even knew that the more processed our foods are, it just increases the amount of touch points that we have and the increased risk of exposure. The reason I say be practical is some of those we have no control over. So don't increase your stress. Let's just be as mindful as we can so that we can put our resources into what's giving us the biggest benefit. If we have vitamin deficiencies that we can address, or if we know that we're short on sleep, or our diet's completely out of whack, we can put a lot of effort into those and, address a lot of this toxin stuff as it comes. Because it's a challenge, I would still encourage you to look at some of these things that you can do today. So that's how we reduce our toxin exposure. Another really important piece is defining your purpose. When we think about weight loss and when we think about mastering our metabolism, why? Why do you want to do that in your life? Maybe it's to fit in the clothes at the back of your closet that you've just been holding on to for so long that you're like, these are me. And maybe that's because I want to feel more like my inner self. I want to appear how I feel on the inside. Maybe you just want to have more energy. Maybe you want to get rid of that afternoon crash. Maybe you just want to enjoy retirement, or maybe you want to be more productive at work, improve your longevity. Maybe you've noticed in your family you have a risk of cardiovascular disease or Alzheimer's or dementia, and you want to lower your risk so that that's not an issue for you. This is probably one of the most important things, is to envision yourself in a positive light and what the future can hold. A great resource for this would be Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he's done some great work on the role that positive self-talk has in all of this, and being able to have a clear picture of where you want to be. Because when we can do that, then all of a sudden we can find and we can celebrate those wins along the way. Maybe we don't have, exactly what we want, but we can see that we're heading there. And the nice thing about this is there's so many different metrics available to track that can help us. We can, anywhere technology is amazing, between sleep tracking and body fat percentages and weight and how's our afternoon energy. We can check our resting metabolic rate with things. We can check it, these epigenetic aging tests that are up and coming. Metabolic health through all of our health markers, and are we improving like our micronutrient deficiencies and things like that. There's so many different things that we can look at through our life to say, just like this guy, yeah, I'm getting it. And it's great to celebrate, because this whole thing is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a journey that takes a long time. We've spent countless years building the lifestyle that we have. So we can't change that overnight and expect it to stick. So I would encourage you to think about that more than anything. Is what is your why? Why is it that you want to master your metabolism? And let's keep track. And are we getting closer to that goal? Journaling becomes so important, because you're able to just check in with yourself. Okay, I'm a few minutes over. Let's talk about the challenges that we have for today. Again, this is a journey. You could be somewhere where you're like, this was all overwhelming. That was a lot, Brandon. What I'd like you to do is just pick something that would work for you. So it could be something as simple as, I'm going to change the way that I store my leftovers. I'm going to put them in glass containers and get rid of the plastic. I'm just going to get outside more every single day and just get more exposure to the sun. I'm going to increase my fasting. And we can follow Jenny, 24-hour fast twice a week, and really increase that autophagy that our body's going through to really help drive out these toxins. Maybe we're just going to say, hey, I'm going to eliminate the negative self-talk. One thing that we've tried to do is, if we ever say something that we don't want to say, whether it's negative self-talk or whatever it is, give your brain that feedback signal and say, oh, cancel, and say what it is that you want to say. So whether it's you're waking up in the morning and you're like, I didn't get enough sleep. You're like, oh, cancel. It's a new day and I'm excited. What if today is the greatest day? So you can do something as simple as that. If it's something that's with mental health or trauma or things like that can affect everything in our body, I would encourage you to reach out to someone you trust. Reach out to a trained professional so we can start to address some of that to help you feel better about yourself as well, and work through some of that stuff. And then you can always work with a provider. We can check for micronutrient deficiencies. We can check for toxin overloads. You can reach out to us. If you have a great primary care provider that you're working with, reach out to him and talk to him, or them, I should say, and talk to them about this. And find support groups online. We have that upcoming cohort in April where we're going to have a group of like-minded people that are wanting to change their metabolism over time. Send us an email. We can give you more information on what that looks like, and you can always work with us as well. We are here. We do offer 15-minute consults so that we can go over that and kind of review and see where you're at and if what we have to offer is something that works for you. So that was a lot. More than anything, I do want you to stay positive. Let me close this out so I can see you too. Ta-da. So I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that we all get to spend this time together. That was probably the most research heavy one that we'll have all week. And I hope that in the coming days, as we strive to stay within that 30 minutes, we can have some more interaction through the chat and get some back and forth. But I hope that this gives you a lot to think about. We are excited. We're excited to be here and be of service. Let us know if you have questions. There will be an email that goes out that you can respond to, so that on Friday, come that question and answer section, we can address those issues that pop up quite frequently. Have a wonderful day. I've kept you too long. We'll see you tomorrow.